9 out of 10 Filipinos approve of President Duterte's performance in the course of dealing with the pandemic. The Vice President fares lower with an approval rating below 60%. Just a few days after its rollout, authorities have suspended the mandatory use of beep cards in buses along EDSA. The Transportation Department wants to look for other service providers. And the depleted Miami Heat clinch a much-needed Game 3 win to extend the NBA Final Series. We begin tonight year via distance learning amid the COVID-19 crisis. The Education Department is claiming a victory over the obstacles and disruption wrought by the pandemic. Shaila Francisco has the big story.
22.5 million public school students started classes on Monday, but this time that means welcoming the academic year inside their homes. The Education Department, in fact, held the flag ceremony virtually. Education officials were designated across the nation to monitor the opening of classes. Their initial assessment shows that schools are ready with the various modes of distance learning. 13 million students will be using printed modules at least for the first quarter. Others will utilize online and offline digital learning. DepEd says most schools have already distributed printed modules. A few students, however, have yet to receive their copies since they either enrolled late or their parents have yet to claim the learning materials. Modules, says the DepEd, are more appropriate for distance learning than academic books.
Kasi pag distance learning tayo, gusto natin ang mag-aaral ay madaling makakapag-interact sa kanyang binabasa o ginagamit. Kaya ang iba po may nagtatanong, bakit hindi aklat? Pag-aklat, kailangan dinidiscuss yan ng teacher sa classroom at pwede rin yan sanang gamitin pero hindi yan yung pinakamaganda o pinakamainam o pinakaangkop na gagamiting learning resource pag distance learning.
Around 24.7 million students have enrolled this school year, a lion's share of whom are in public schools. DepEd is now campaigning for enrollment in private schools and alternative learning systems as only about half of last year's quota was met.
Halos lahat na buong enrollment figure natin para sa public sector nakamit ng DepEd. Ang medyo challenging ay ang sa private sector dahil hindi nakabalik lahat ng mga private sector learners natin. Pero sabi ko nga, Sir Martin, dahil unti-unti nang binubuksan ang ating ekonomiya, magkakaroon na ng trabaho ang mga parents, makabalik na sila sa mga gawain nila at makayanan na nilang mapagpapag-aral ang kanilang mga anak.
DepEd is optimistic that there will be more enrollees as more parents have been inquiring in the past few days. The department will be accepting late enrollees until November 21, although the agency encourages parents to not wait for the deadline. DepEd also warned teachers against swamping their students with academic requirements.
Medyo overwhelming po ang mga nire-require natin sa mga bata. Kasi po sa bahay namin, mayroon kaming alaga na grade 6, nag-aaral na siya ng Sabado at Linggo at nakikita po namin na dahil naman ito sa sobrang excitement ng mga kasama nating guro at siguro ng mga supervisors at principal na dapat punong-puno para mabawi yung pagkukulang simula nung Hunyo.
President Rodrigo Duterte believes this is the dawn of a new era for Philippine education.
As you now ventured into distance and online learning.
Duterte said this year's opening of schools is a momentous occasion and nothing can get in the way. Not even COVID-19, as the Philippines has already recorded more than 322,000 cases. Shaila Francisco, VR1 News.
There were many cracks and gaps in the first day of school. Teachers struggled to manage online classes. Many students failed to even register their attendance in the first day of learning from home. A look at their challenges in this report by Maan Enriquez.
57-year-old public school teacher Grace Nahe admits not being techie makes the shift to distance learning more challenging for her. On the first day of classes, she virtually met with parents of her advisory class. She also reviewed her students of their past lessons. But instead of working from home, she decided to come at P. Guevara Elementary School in Manila.
Ako lang mag-isa sa room ko, ang kapitbahay may asong napakalakas. At may mga sasakyan, may kuliglig, minsan sumisigaw agad ang mga kapitbahay.
She started working inside a classroom but had to transfer to the school lobby due to poor signal. She used Facebook Messenger to chat with parents and Google Meet for video conferencing. Only 7 sets of parents and students out of 41 total enrollees were able to attend the online orientation.
Konti pa lang kasi nadidismiss daw. Nadidismiss yung nagjo-join. Siguro nga dahil mahina ang signal.
Teacher Grace shared that she felt overwhelmed and emotional at the same time as classes have finally opened.
Kaya mabuti na lang at may mga younger teachers na very willing naman silang magturo.
Meanwhile, 56-year-old MAPE teacher Victoria Salvania said 35 out of her 40 students were present in the online meeting. She needed to use 2 devices, 1 laptop for video and a cell phone for her audio.
Kasi nga, dahil nga siguro sa hindi maganda yung connection sa laptop, so naisipan ko na gamitin ang aking cellphone.
Internet was also a problem for practical arts teacher Nestor Reyes, who chose to work from home. He was supposed to orient 25 students earlier today, but only 10 were present in the Google Meet.
Hindi po makasali, sir.
Hindi makasali. Bakit kaya? Wala silang access?
Hindi po yata.
Teacher Nestor admitted that teaching will be more challenging now as he has to adjust hands-on classes like drafting for the virtual platform.
Dito sa Google Classroom, sa online mode of learning, ay challenge talaga kung paano mag-hands-on activity.
Teachers Nestor, Victoria, and Grace said Facebook Messenger greatly helped them in communicating with the students and their parents, but conducting online video classes is still a huge problem. For now, they will send soft copies of modules to students who still don't have their printed learning materials. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Students and teachers in the provinces and rural areas are especially challenged in the new learning systems. In Boracay Island, where tourists are slowly trickling in, parents from the Ati community worry about facilitating distance learning. Most of them were unable to finish school, let alone handle computers and gadgets. They now rely on the Bayanihan spirit, with college students teaching those in high school and high school students teaching younger batches. Students are also trying to make do with the limited computers available, only one of which has access to the internet. In Davao de Oro, connectivity is also a problem in the town of Maco. Teachers are also having problems providing modules which they say require budgets and resources, both of which they do not have. Distance learning, meanwhile, takes a literal sense over in Lanao del Norte, where teachers endure a 2-hour trek across a creek just to reach students and deliver modules. Teachers of Tipolo Elementary School say the modules are crucial to the start of classes since finding network signal in the area can be difficult. The Education Department has released grading system guidelines for this school year's distance learning. In an interview with Radio 5, Undersecretary Nepomuceno Malaluan said grading of students will be based on assessment and feedback mechanisms to fit the distance learning curriculum. He adds that they cannot focus on paper and pencil tests because these cannot be fully administered by teachers. DepEd had earlier said that they will not be holding periodical exams in public schools this academic year to avoid cheating. Grades will now be based on performance tasks that will be added to portfolios submitted to teachers. Nepomuceno said the agency is willing to make adjustments to the assessment system based on parents' feedback.
Handa tayo na magbigay ng adjustments in the process based on the feedback of parents at saka yung pagkwekwentuhan din at pag-uusap ng mga guro mismo and transform that into policy to be more responsive to the needs of the time.
We'll go for a quick break. When the big story returns, let's take a look at how distance learning is affecting the teaching of children with special needs. And the palace takes a swipe at Vice President Leni Robredo after her approval rating in a Pulse Asia survey figures lower than that of other officials. The details next. You're watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. It's not just students and teachers that are dealing with the transition to online learning this year. Some parents are also left scratching their heads on how to assist their children. Camille Samonte takes a look at their plight.
Lola Clarita usually gets busy cooking for her small eatery as early as 5 in the morning. But it will be different now as she has to do this while assisting her 4 grandchildren in their online classes. 2 of them are in elementary, while the other 2 are already junior high school students.
Mahirap kasi nag-online sila. Tapos, ilan sila? 4. Eh ako man, nag-ano din ako, tumutulong sa anak ko dahil mga anak nga. Mahirap talaga yung online ngayon. Kaya bahala na ako ano naman sila eh. Kaya lang ako di ako marunong mag-ano ng cellphone.
With this, Lola Clarita shared that she can no longer help them in doing their homeworks.
Pagod na. Pagod na kasi mula madaling araw eh. Kaya hindi ako gaano makaano sa kanila. Sinusuanuhan ko na lang sila sa pagkain.
Meanwhile, her grandchildren said they still prefer face-to-face classes.
Pag face-to-face po kasi mas madali, mas madali po yung discuss, tsaka di po gaano katagal. Ngayon po rin kasi nahihirapan po rin kasi yung kaklasmate, yung mga iba pong kaklasmate ko kasi isa lang po yung gadget.
Rico and Maricel are facing the same problem. They said it is difficult to balance their time as they have to sell their produce while guiding their 2 children. Both of them require much attention as they are still in elementary.
Mahirap sa ngayon dahil nagtitinda kami ngayon para hati yung oras namin. Halimbawa, mga anak namin online lang. Mahirap online, walang matutunan yung mga bata.
Naglalako pa ako ng gulay. Medyo hindi ko sila napupukusan po ngayon. Hindi tulad po nung nasa loob po sila ng school.
The local government of Manila has distributed free tablets to public students. But the problem is the lack of internet connection in some areas.
Nahirapan rin po kami sa signal. Wala rin po kasi kaming wifi. Sila papa po nagtitinda lang. Hindi po kami makapag-focus ng online class.
Due to the challenges, Maricel admitted that they have already thought of dropping out their children from school. Over the weekend, Education Undersecretary Tonicito Umali reminded the parents that they are only meant to guide students in answering the modules. For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
Special education teachers also struggled on the first day of distance learning as the virtual environment made it more challenging to teach children with special needs. JC Cosico with the story.
As early as 6:30 a.m., teacher Rochelle Yu has already finished her setup for her virtual classes today. More than an hour later, she stood up for the virtual flag ceremony with her students who have special needs. They were accompanied by their parents. Their daily exercises were also made virtual. Teacher Rochelle has been teaching learners with special needs for 2 years now. She admits doing it amid the COVID-19 pandemic is all the more challenging. When classes were about to start, some of her students started crying.
Why, Simon? Bahay muna. Nandito si teacher, oh. Yes, it's closed. Simon? Simon? Hi, Simon. Why are you crying? Why are you crying? Just smile?
Gusto niya magsuot ng sapato.
Gaya kanina, di ba, umiiyak na yung bata. Parang hindi ko alam kung paano ko siya patatahanin, aaluin. So, kailangan parang hindi ma-board yung bata. Kailangan agad ma-click mo agad kung ano yung mga ano.
Rochelle says some skills are difficult to teach online, including writing.
Kasi sa amin pa lang, sa face-to-face, talagang kailangan hawakan namin yung mga bata, yung kamay, kahit kung ano, iisa-isahin namin sila. Para lang ma-trace nila yung ano, yung bawat letter or shapes, ganun. This time, ewan ko kung ano, sa mga magulang ngayon.
Parents are urged to exert extra patience towards their children.
Kaya lagi namin sinasabi sa mga magulang na kayo talaga ngayon. So kung ano yung tiyaga namin, dapat ganun din po sila. Kung mga ibang regular mga pupils, mahirap ng turuan, di ba? What more pa sila?
Brenda Sullivan has a child with Down syndrome. She admits there are times that her child is difficult to please.
Sabi mo, right. Sabi mo, you say right.
Moody kasi sila eh. Kaya siguro ganun.
Paano moody mo?
Pag gusto nila gumawa, gagawa sila. Pag gusto na magsalita, magsasalita.
Adding to her woes is her lack of expertise in using gadgets. Their internet connection at home is also slow, but Brenda is up for the challenge.
Kailangan natin gawin yun para sa mga anak natin. Kasi wala namang ibang gagawa, kundi yung mga magulang din.
Child rights organization Save the Children Philippines says distance learning has a big effect on learners with disabilities. That's why they underscore the importance of parents' involvement in their children's learning process.
May hindi nakikita, kumbaga may hindi nasusubaybayan yung mga guro, no, at gayon din yung mga magulang. Kailangan sila magsanib pwersa at mag-complement ng mga strengths at ang areas of collaboration.
The Education Department for its part says they have coordinated with schools to limit the size of the class. This will allow teachers to focus on the specific needs of learners with disabilities. For News 5, JC Cosico, VR1 News.
These are the other big stories today. Baguio City has seen an uptick in COVID-19 infections the past days due to community transmission. Cases are now reaching more than 1,100. But the summer capital tourism bubble will continue, says the local government. This as they have modernized their contact tracing efforts. The city is using a high-tech database and matrix system to quickly map new possible hotspots in Baguio. The Interagency Task Force is looking into using antigen testing for screening domestic travelers going to Boracay. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said they are just waiting for the result of its pilot testing in Baguio before using it in other destinations. Meanwhile, a delay of more than a month. Clinical trials for the Japanese anti-flu drug Avigan could begin this week. This comes after the DOH and the University of the Philippines finally signed the clinical trial agreement, which hampered the rollout of the tests. House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano is denying the allegations of Negros Oriental Representative Arnie Teves that Taguig and Pateros had a big chunk of Metro Manila's infrastructure budget. Cayetano said Teves wants to have more allocation for his district because he has an illegal budget. He also denied favoring allies, saying lawmakers have a fair amount of infrastructure funding. In the middle of the country's uphill battle against COVID-19, President Rodrigo Duterte stood out in a Pulse Asia survey conducted last September. Results suggest that 91% of Filipinos approve of Duterte's performance during the pandemic. 5% of the respondents were dissatisfied, 5% were undecided. Next to Duterte, Senate President Tito Soto garnered an 84% approval rating. Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano, who is in the middle of a House speakership dispute, scored a 70% approval rating. Chief Justice Diosdado Peralta had the lowest rating at 44%. Vice President Lenny Robredo, meanwhile, had an approval rating of 57%. Palace spokesman Harry Roque welcomed the results with open arms in a virtual press briefing in Boracay while taking a swipe at Robredo.
Nako, Madam VP, mukhang tama aking sinabi. Ayaw ata ng Pilipino na mumulitika sa panahon ng pandemya.
Robredo spokesman Barry Gutierrez concurred with Roque, saying that's precisely the reason why the public supports the Vice President. Gutierrez noted that despite the Vice President's low budget and the continuous attacks against Robredo on social media, the Vice President remains committed to her duties. Let's pause for a quick break. When we come back, the beep cards provider is studying rolling out a QR code ticketing system as authorities suspend the mandatory use of beep cards. And a short-handed Miami team steals a game from the Lakers. Jimmy Butler stunned with a 40-point triple-double. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. The Senate is seeking more information on the Office of the Solicitor General's budget, as well as the allowances received by its head, Jose Calida, who is among last year's highest paid officials. Mean Los Baños with the details.
Solicitor General Jose Calida was absent in the Senate's Monday budget hearing, but this did not stop Senator Francis Tolentino from questioning why Calida ranked second among the highest-paid government officials in the country. Reports from the Commission on Audit placed Calida's earnings, including allowances and bonuses, at around 17 million pesos in 2019.
Ano yung napadagdag? Nag-increase yung budget, or are there allowances?
I don't have the exact figures on what the Sojan receives specifically, but from what I understand, he receives allowances from the client agencies that the Office of the Solicitor General represents. Right? It's provided under the law that strengthened the OSG.
Tolentino finds questionable that Calida's allowances amounted to more than half of his annual salary. A Commission on Audit circular states that the government official's allowances should not exceed 50% of the yearly salary. Calida, who serves as the government's top lawyer, filed the quo warranto petition which ousted Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno. He filed the same petition challenging ABS-CBN's congressional franchise. Tolentino also asked about complaints from some OSG lawyers regarding the selection of those who will receive additional allowances.
It largely remain within the discretion of the Solicitor General. Tama ba yan, Atty. Angeles? Kayo lang ang pumipili. Yung daw mga task force na paborito, yun lang ang bibigyan.
Under law, Sojan is given leeway to choose which lawyers would be assigned to specific task forces.
Tolentino also questioned the increase in the OSG's budget for foreign travels next year despite the pandemic. Tolentino doubts the agency's officials could even travel by next year amid the health crisis. Assistant Solicitor General Angeles explained that they will request that their travel funds be reallocated to their capital outlay so they can use it to improve their office building. They will make the same request for their confidential funds amounting to 20 million pesos. Tolentino then asked the OSG how confidential funds have been spent the past years. The senator noted that based on the rules, these funds could only be used for national security and peace and order purposes. In the end, Tolentino asked the Committee on Finance to defer its plenary recommendation of an over 1 billion peso budget for the OSG. That's until the agency provides answers to his inquiries.
we need to be apprised how this confidential funds allocation was utilized during the previous years, because and for this coming fiscal year, because the representative is claiming a different reason, that it will be converted into capital outlay. And then the travel funds again will be converted again into capital outlay. It appears, Mr. Chairman, and with the indulgence of Senator Pimentel, we are dealing with a different budgetary proposal.
Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
Following today's suspension of the mandatory use of beep cards on the EDSA busway, the Transportation Department wants to bring in additional service providers for more options in contactless payments. Gerard de la Peña with the story.
This booth selling beep cards in Monumento is close to empty, a far cry from the long lines last week. The few who approached it were only reloading existing cards. The Transportation Department has suspended the mandatory use of beep cards on the EDSA busway, effective Monday. The agency said they arrived at this decision after AF Payments, the company behind the beep cards, refused to give away the cards for free. The DOTr will hold talks on Tuesday to determine if there should be a new contactless payment solutions provider, among other measures. Transportation Secretary Arthur Tugade believes that there should be more than one payment service provider.
And the bottom line is, dapat libre yung card. Sino? Yung existing service provider o merong iba? Baka merong iba. Sabi ko maghanap ng iba. Pero ang hangarin ko, kailangan maraming service providers kasi ayaw ko na kontrolado tayo.
Commuters are worried, though, that having too many cards will cause confusion. Apart from the beep cards used at the EDSA busway, LRT, and MRT, Commonwealth Avenue, Cubao, and Marikina also have their own beep rides cards, which cost 100 pesos each. Card holders need to maintain a balance of 35 pesos and a convenience fee of 8 pesos per reload.
Hindi ko naman alam na may iba pala yung gagamitin sa beep. Akala ko eto na pwede siya. So pang MRT lang pala talaga siya.
Oo, nakakalito. Sobra. Siyempre, pabago-bago. Ang mo, gano'n, tapos biglang babago. Nag-ano ka, magre-react ka, ano ba ito? Nakakapagod, sobra.
A progressive group, meanwhile, is putting the blame on the DOTr for excluding itself from talks between the consortium of bus operators and service providers.
Hindi nila yan dapat pinaubaya sa mga negosyante na sila lang ang mag-uusap. Yung gobyerno kasi, siya yung kinatawan ng commuter Siya yung kinatawan ng public. Hindi pwedeng wala siya sa usapan.
Meanwhile, in an interview on One News Agenda, DOTr Senior Consultant Alberto Swansing reiterates that the AFPI will still earn a lot even without the 80 peso payment from beep cards.
Ang sinasabi namin, if you look at the whole system, kikita na kayo So bakit pagkakakitaan niyo pa yung card? Ang sinasabi nila palagi 80 pesos, yun din ang bili nila doon sa supplier nila. Plus yung mga ano yung nilagay nila ron sa sistema.
As an alternative, AF Payments said it will create a system upgrade that will make use of QR codes. This can be printed in paper tickets or stored in mobile phones, which could make way for the phase-out of beep cards. But for now, those with beep cards may still use the cards, while those who don't may opt to pay in cash when they board buses. Officials are also proposing to refund commuters via deposits if they are to return their cards. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
It was a much-needed win for the undermanned Miami Heat as they narrow the gap in the NBA Final Series 2-1. The Heat stunned the Los Angeles Lakers 115-104 in Game 3 of the series. With two key players down, Jimmy Butler stepped up big time, finishing with a triple-double of 40 points, 11 rebounds, and 14 assists. The Heat sealed the deal after breaking away with a double-digit lead in the final quarter. LeBron James top scored for the Lakers with 25 points and 10 rebounds. Catch Game 4 live on Wednesday at 9 a.m. on TV5 and at 11 a.m. for the delayed telecast on One Sports. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow, 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. You can also now enjoy the new way of learning at home because DepEd TV is available for free to all Signal and satellite subscribers. Tune in to channel 149 or Signal and on Signal and channel 189 for satellite. I'm Robbie Alampay. We are One News. Good evening.